Hey folks, Ira here. I hope you've had a great Sunday. Thanks for tuning in for the Earthquake Report. Today is May the 1st, 2016. Today is also known as Loyalty, Mother Goose, and Save the Rhino Day. Yep. 87 years ago today, Iran experienced a 7.2 earthquake that killed over 3,200 and destroyed 88 villages. This earthquake was so intense that aftershocks were experienced for 4 years. Wow. Alright, earthquake report time. Here we go. Before we review today's data, let's look at what has happened since Thursday's earthquake report. Shortly after we uploaded our video, the East Pacific Rise, which is roughly 540 miles from Mexico, was struck with a 6.6. Fortunately, no damage was reported as its epicenter was out at sea. A few buoys showed unusual movement. However, no tidal waves or tsunamis were experienced. Friday was, for the most part, quiet. However, we did experience some rather interesting earthquakes. Greece clocked in 2, a 4.5, and a 4.2. Oklahoma had 7 to strike, the strongest being back-to-back 3.3s. Alabama experienced an extremely rare magnitude 3.0 Friday. This was near a collection of fracking operations, and not only this, but the earthquake fell right along the North American Craton. Interesting. Also, along the Craton via Weaverville, North Carolina, we experienced 2 earthquakes, these being a 1.8 and a 1.5. As you know, this area has been hit with a swarm of seismic activity recently. While researching today, I came across a rather interesting news report from this area. Check it out.
And a dozen earthquakes reported near a mountain town. The newsroom has been getting a lot of calls from viewers for a week now. News 13's Jerica Insco joins us live in Weaverville. Jerica, what do people there have to say about all this recent activity?
Larry, many people weren't sure what they heard, but then they heard about the earthquakes and connected the dots. At tonight's soccer practice, these parents, of course, cheered for their daughters. But on the sidelines, they were talking about what most people heard at least once this week in the Weaverville area.
Just heard a big bang, a bang that I've never heard before.
But since they did not feel anything, an earthquake wasn't what came to mind.
It didn't sound like thunder, and there was no thunderstorms in the area. It didn't really sound like an explosion. It didn't sound like an aircraft or anything like that. So I was kind of like, what in the world was that noise?
Once the word got out about recent earthquakes, people started putting 2 and 2 together.
I didn't take any notice until my wife said, hey, somebody told her that was an earthquake.
One after the other, ending the week with 2 more.
This morning it felt, again, more like a chill, like you're shaking. Like, you don't pay attention to your surroundings around you moving, but it's interesting that there's so much activity here recently.
For those of us unfamiliar with earthquake booms, you might find this interesting. Earthquake booms have been reported for a long time, and they trend to occur more on the northeastern U.S. and along the East Coast. Of course, some booms could be of man-made origins, like explosions or planes, but there have been many reports of booms that cannot be explained. No one knows for sure, but scientists speculate that these booms are probably small, shallow earthquakes that are too small to be recorded, but large enough to be felt by people nearby. The most recent documented earthquake sounds were from a swarm of small earthquakes that unnerved the city of Spokane, Washington in 2001. Many of the Spokane quakes were definitely accompanied by booming sounds. The quakes in Spokane were shallow, sometimes only a mile or 2 deep. This falls right in line with the Weaverville earthquake swarm. The average depth for these quakes comes in at only 3/4 of a mile. It's very shallow. Anyways, outside of these earthquakes, all registered as being normal. Yesterday, Saturday, April the 30th, was for the most part quiet as well. We registered only 159 for the day. The most intense was a magnitude 6.0 that struck Vanuatu, and an unusual earthquake that fell along the eastern limb of the North American Craton. This was a 2.4 in Vonore, Tennessee. If we look at today's data, we'll see that as of 3:41 p.m. Eastern Time, we have clocked in 130 earthquakes. This is roughly 67% less than what was experienced this time last year. A year ago today, we clocked in 392. The strongest to strike the planet then was a 6.8 that hit Papua New Guinea. The most intense to strike the globe today was a 5.1 that just shook Vanuatu. This has been the only earthquake to fall within the magnitude 5 scale. Interesting. As most of you know, on average, we clock in around 3 magnitude 5 earthquakes per day. We have experienced 8 magnitude 4 earthquakes, a 4.9 that struck Chichishima, Japan, the Fiji Islands with a 4.9, Barbuda with a 4.8, the Philippines with a 4.8 as well, Papua New Guinea with a 4.8, Indonesia with a 4.4, and a 4.5 in Afghanistan. That is right in line with our normal conditions. If you recall, the average number of magnitude 4 earthquakes to strike the planet is roughly 9 per day. If we look to the states, we see that Hawaii has clocked in only 2, the strongest to strike the Aloha State being a 2.8. Alaska has registered only 29, the strongest being the previously mentioned 4.3, which struck Nikolsky. The second most intense to strike was a 2.7 in Valdez. Washington continues to experience numerous earthquakes. Thus far, 12 have been experienced. The strongest to hit was a 1.6 in Coupeville. 50% of the earthquakes that rattled the Evergreen State today originated from Amboy. Oregon has registered 3 today, the average magnitude being a 1.6. All 3 earthquakes struck the Lakeview area, with the strongest being a 2.2. California has clocked in only 51. The most intense there was a 2.5 that struck Albury. Seismic swarms are limited to the usual locations, the geysers with 11, Mammoth Lakes with 8, and Cobb with 8 as well. Nevada has mostly been quiet with only 14 on the books. 43% had an epicenter in and around Hawthorne. The strongest to hit was a 1.9 in Yerington. According to the USGS, Montana has experienced only 4 earthquakes today, the strongest there being a 1.4. Idaho has 1 on record. This is a 1.9 in Moulin. Oklahoma has experienced only 1 earthquake as well today. This was a 3.5 that struck the heart of the fracking operation in Fairview. Kansas was hit by a 3.3. This was just outside of Anthony. The epicenter of this earthquake fell just a 15th of a mile from a fracking well. Interesting. Finally, snuggled between the New Madrid seismic zone and the North American Craton, we experienced a 3.5 just 8.7 miles outside of La Center, Kentucky. This earthquake was felt in parts of Illinois, Tennessee, and even over 267 miles away in Miller, Missouri. With the earthquake quiet present, I would prepare for seismic activity over the next several days. If history repeats itself, we'll see this in the form of earthquake swarms or even more intense earthquakes along quiet zones, areas like the California coast, along the eastern limb of the Craton, and parts of Indonesia. And that is it for the earthquake report. If you experienced an earthquake today, or if you would like to simply chat, please post down below. I'd like to hear from you. Make certain to like and subscribe, share if you feel inclined. Also, if you like the social media thing, you can link to us via the standard allotted social sites in the description. We'll end this report with a video feed of our favorite star. Have a great night, guys. Hoorah!